Welcome to Compound Insights, a podcast by CFA Society New York. I'm your host, Rob Rowan. Today we're here with Ben Steiner. In Ben's day job, he works with asset managers and institutional investors to help them think about how to use AI technology in their investment process. I think he is very interesting for members of CFA New York to hear from because his work focuses on decision-making processes like the things that you all do every day, and on explainability, which is, of course, important to all of your stakeholders. He is also a lecturer on the MSc Enterprise Risk Management program at Columbia University. Now, previously, Ben held Chief of Staff responsibilities in the Global Fixed Income Division of BNP Paribas Asset Management, and he was Head of Model Management, Portfolio Management, and a quant researcher at various investment managers and quantitative hedge funds. You can find out more about them on his LinkedIn page. Now, importantly to us here at CFA Society New York, Ben was on the board of directors of the Society of Quantitative Analysts. Now, CFA New York members may have attended the event that we co-host with SQA each January. He holds a BA from the University of Manchester and an MSc from Imperial College London. So, Ben, thank you for being here today.
Rob, thank you for the invitation. Great to be here.
So I think one of the things that a lot of people are wondering about, particularly because AI is so much in the news right now. The launch of ChatGPT brought it to every house around, and they quickly got up to 120 million users in what seemed like a very short period of time. I think a lot of people are wondering to what depth and what type of AI implementation do you think is common and prudent for investment management firms now in the main?
It depends, Rob. I think the honest answer is it depends, and there's probably no one size fits all answer. Like, obviously, everyone is at least thinking about doing something or doing a lot of things together. And that probably takes different forms. Certainly when I started in the industry, we were called quant analysts. Then we became data scientists. Then, the age of machine learning and the age of AI. Unquestionably, using data and statistics and automation to help make decisions, I think now it's unequivocally a good thing. No one's going to question doing that. Unlike when we both started in the industry 25 years ago, there was this distinction between discretionary managers and quants. So if we think of AI as just the continuation of quant work and data science to help make decisions, I think everyone, all investment management companies themselves will be thinking in some way, shape or form, using data and statistics to help them in their decision-making process. Now, where are they doing that? I think that's sort of the real question. We always talk about forecasting asset returns and predicting the future. And that's certainly the top of the pyramid in terms of where people are aspiring to. But I think there's a number of other areas as well that are super useful, perhaps not at the top of the pyramid, but sort of further down, that helps asset management firms do things quicker, better, more automated, more scalable. Things that come to mind immediately are things like turning unstructured data into structured data. Typically in the years gone by, we were limited by numerical data for our models. Now text and image and sentiment can all be incorporated into models too. What can we also use more advanced techniques for? Well, there's so much data out there these days. Some of it's good, some of it's bad, but there's certainly a lot of data there. Helping to sift through that data, I think, is one of the big uses of AI to understand where there could be value that merits further human investigation. And finally, there's two sides to all investment management businesses. There's the investing side and the client side. Mm-hmm. And it is certainly the case that there's a lot of modeling and AI work being done around the client side in terms of enhancing the client experience and enhancing the decisions that firms make about clients and how they interact with them.
Okay, that's fascinating. But I would like to break that down into a couple of different parts because we just covered the waterfront of investment management companies. And the client thing is, I'm sure, distinct in many ways. So let's just talk about the money management side of it, if you will. Let's focus on that for a second. What I realize there's no median format out there, but what do you think is most common? Is this more in the hands of analysts, portfolio managers? Does the data integration impact a chief investment officer more, or how do you think it goes up and down the water chain?
Great question. I mean, I think sort of the quick answer, maybe somewhat flippant, is all of the above.
Mm-hmm.
Decisions are being taken by the analysts, by the portfolio managers, by the chief investment officers, by the risk department, the risk officers, and so on. And I think now it's not controversial using data, and automating any repetitive decisions is a quantitative task that can be done. Now, 25 years ago, when I started in the industry, that probably wasn't the case. The quants were seen as sort of the threat, perhaps, to the less quantitative members of the various teams. But now it's sort of very, very much taken for granted. So to your question of who can benefit the most, I think anyone who wants to make decisions about their role where there's a number of features in what they're doing can benefit. So I mean, that those features typically would be, if there's data and a pattern exists in that data, then that pattern can be found. Now, of course, if someone's making a decision around data that changes, that is never stationary or stable, that's a bit more challenging. But if there's a decision that has to be taken and we can learn from that data, and that pattern is not expected to change too much going forward, that's the critical question that maybe we'll dwell on a bit later about, is how much is too much? Then those are the candidates, so areas where AI and machine learning can certainly help.
Yeah, I think it's been less than 25 years. I can remember in my past life when I was an analyst, I remember the first time I heard on some CMBS work that we were doing that there was an analysis going not only of foot traffic, but also of parking lot data that came from satellites. And I thought, God, that's cool, but how will they ever use it? And that was less than 10 years ago. So
yep, that I remember that example well. It was counting the cars in car parks to try and understand the foot traffic going into department stores and malls, and which stores were doing well, and basically trying to nowcast the revenue numbers prior to the official numbers being released. And then sort of the more information is always better, sooner information is always better as well.
Right, sure, in investment management. Now, if we could switch to the client side, that is not something I've thought about, and I think that probably a lot of folks haven't who are CFA New York members. Is this data being used to segment clients into finer and finer groups, anticipate what they'll need? What is the get in the current frame?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, maybe I'll explain, predicting markets versus predicting people. Rob, what do you think is going to be easier?
Oh, markets. Well, they're the same, right? They're markets or people.
I think the challenge with the markets, obviously, is we may not have a stationary system long enough to learn from the historical data that we can apply to the future. So it's possible at certain time frames,
right?
But that's it's dependent on the time frame and the amount of concept drift in the market. When it comes to modeling people and types of people that do certain things, if I'm running an investment management firm and I've got internal data on my prospects and my actual clients and my interactions with those prospects, the question that I'd probably want to know is, what is it that my firm is doing, and what is it that my client-facing teams are doing that results in prospects becoming clients, or clients staying with us and not leaving? Because obviously, if I'm managing someone's money and charging them a fee, if I keep them this year, I earn a fee this year.
Right.
If I keep them next year, and so on and so on. So the most I can reduce the churn of clients, the better.
Mm-hmm.
And the more I can convert prospects into clients, the better. So given a panel of data, i.e. the behaviors of those prospects or those clients, that's actually a really good problem to pose, which is, what are the characteristics of those clients that stay, and what are the behaviors of our firm to those clients that result in them staying? And then the natural implication of this is, how should we behave differently? So what should we do more of? What should we do less of?
Interesting. That's fascinating for any of the CFA New York members who've worked on the sales side. This is also really obvious, because one of the things that's been talked about for years on the sales side is the client acquisition costs. They are high, very high compared to retaining a client. Well, so let's switch back to the money management side, because this is something that we had discussed on a webinar yesterday that was about CECL. And a lot of what I've seen about AI kind of goes into helping one of the most difficult parts of investment management, which is longer-term forecasting. Longer-term forecasting is something that I learned to avoid doing because I just didn't think I could ever do it. Do you think that there are there current AI implementations that will help with the accuracy of long-term forecasts, are there things in the pipeline you should think about?
Great question. I mean, let me start that by sort of giving you a mental model of how to think about forecasting and concept drift, which is obviously that what we really want to do is predict the next period, whether the next period is a short term or long term or whatever the period of interest to us is. And there's two dimensions going on. On one dimension, there is the amount of data that we can collect. And on the other dimension, there is how much the system or the market is expected to change. So in the ideal world, we collect a lot of data, and the system doesn't change much. We make a great prediction.
Mm-hmm.
In the other extreme, the system is changing continually. We haven't got much data. We can't really do much.
Right.
So in that second case, no model is going to help. No AI is going to help. There's not much to learn on. In the first case, we can do a lot with it. The question you posed is, how can we forecast in the long run when we might not have much data? So how do we forecast 20 years out using the last 20 years of data? Well, the world's going to change the last 20 years to the next 20 years. So there's a sweet spot in between. There's a sweet spot where we can collect enough data and the markets themselves are not expected to change too much.
Okay.
I'll introduce an idea here called concept drift.
Mm-hmm.
Concept drift is a term used to describe when the statistical properties that we're trying to forecast change.
Okay.
So it's a little bit like my son who's 11 plays soccer. He runs down the field. He tries to kick a goal. And all of a sudden the goalposts move.
Right.
That's concept drift.
Mm-hmm.
You think you're predicting this, you're aiming for a certain target and they move, they change. Or it's like throwing a dice up in the air, and while the dice is you think you've got a 1 in 6 chance of rolling a 6. While the dice is in the air, it magically changes into a 10-sided dice.
Right.
So the distribution that we face changes over time. That's concept drift.
Okay.
So to answer your question sort of somewhat depressingly and pessimistically, it's much easier to forecast in the short run because we can collect more data in the short run.
Right.
Forecasting in the long run, if the conditions are going to change, the data that we've collected, that we've built our model on, may no longer be representative.
Right. Okay. Interesting. So I guess one of the things that this makes me think about a little bit is breaking the world down now into subsectors. There are some sectors that are older than others, so their data range is longer. There are some sectors that may have had what we used to call exogenous variables that came in and knocked them around a little bit. So is the current tools, AI tools, more effective for some subsectors than others?
Great question. And the way I'd answer is it has to be a situation where we can collect data, where we think the data that we can collect will be representative of the future.
Okay.
So by definition, if sectors didn't exist, we won't have any data.
Mm-hmm.
If sectors are more modern, there's a data scarcity issue. Now that brings into a really interesting area, which is how the paradigm of AI is shifting. So for many years, the paradigm was get the human out of the picture.
Right.
Collect as much data as possible, more data is better, and then get rid of the human.
Right.
Human sets the system up and gets out of the way. Where I think we may be going, and this is, I'm going to put myself out there and make a statement, and I think people far smarter than me are saying the same thing, is that rather than sort of trying to separate the person from the machine and have this paradigm where we try and get the person away from the machine, we actually want to ensemble the learning from the human with the learning from the data.
Okay.
And so sort of the next generation is less about get rid of the human should be out of the picture, to how can we more efficiently bring in human knowledge and human perspective and subjective ideas into the algorithms. And that would also address your previous question about the longer term. So how do you get over this hump of where the longer term is different? Well, the way you do that is you bring in humans who can imagine,
mm-hmm.
or what a lot of people are hoping for is machines that can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe we'll be there one day. But if we're talking about running investment management firms this year, I think sort of machines that imagine isn't a this year thing.
Right. It's a down the road thing. This is fascinating. I did start thinking about how machines plus human beings would work. And I became exceptionally curious, and I have an internet connection, which is always always the wonderful thing. I found that in medicine, one of the things that is very, very difficult to read are mammograms. And there are some hospitals in mostly the developed world where a doctor and a radiologist would come together. They would separately read the mammogram. They would then come together and come to a consensual decision over what was what in the mammogram. They are now using AI-oriented applications that can look at images, and they don't let it replace them. What they do is it's another person, so to speak, it's another chunk of analysis at that consensual decision place. And I thought that was a really good model for finance, too, because I don't think that this stuff survives on its own. And perhaps this brings us to the natural question that's on a lot of people's minds now here on February 15th, 2023, with the massive amount of uncertainty that there is in the markets, is how would you advise someone who's been in traditional markets for most of their career and is looking to future-proof their career? What should they be thinking about training-wise, reading-wise? How do they get in front of this?
Good question. I think the first thing I'd say, your analogy to the health side is very perceptive, which is these are tools. These are tools to help make the human more powerful. So embrace the change. Don't fight it. I mentioned that when I started off in the industry, we had quants on one side of the floor, discretionary management on the other side of the floor. Never the twain shall meet. I also remember that when I first started in the industry, we wouldn't even allow the quants to sit on the same floor as the discretionary portfolio managers. That was a fear-driven response, I suspect now in hindsight. So embrace the change, embrace the new tools. Think that it's not A versus B, it's A and B. And that's the right mindset. Things to sort of read up on, think about, consider, learn about model risk management. So models aren't perfect. In your health example, they were a third seat at the table. Mm-hmm. So learn when models don't work. Learn what to do when models go wrong. Under what conditions are there more uncertainty? Another example would be the airline pilot flying across the Atlantic. There's autopilots in these Boeing 747s.
Right.
But there's still a pilot in the seat watching the autopilot, ready to get involved if needed, or ready to take over if conditions change and is required. So I think that's the model that we're going to, where there's tools to accelerate or increase the bandwidth. So an analyst that can cover X number of stocks can probably cover X times a factor number of stocks with tools that can increase their bandwidth. So I think that this fear of the machines taking over 100% may be a little bit premature and overdone. And so someone with a machine will take the job of someone without a machine. So learning to interact with the machines is probably the key. Other things, I'd still say it's worth learning basic coding. So learning Python is still useful. And I say that because we're going to move to a world where being able to code won't be the impediment. People will be interfacing with programs not via a keyboard and typing. It'll be via ChatGPT, or it'll be via it'll be a different interface to do the same type of work. But I think still it's worth learning to code. Not to become a professional coder, not to write production level code, but mainly to answer your own questions. So if I have a question, I want to answer that question with data. I want to answer it myself quickly, as opposed to having to hand it off to somebody else. I think those are the three.
Yeah, that's great to hear, because the study of Python has changed a lot also, with the advent of a massive number of libraries. Boy, it got easier. You have to know what the library does, but it sure got a lot easier. All right. Well, so thank you, Ben. This has been extremely enlightening. If there are CFA New York members out there who want to learn a little more about this, do take a look at our website, where we have all of the recordings of the events that we have co-hosted with SQA over a number of years now. They're all there. They are a lot easier than reading the papers that those professors wrote. So I encourage you to take a look at that. And with that, thank you all for listening. I'm Rob Rowan with CFA Society New York, and this has been Compound Insights.